Hi there. I'm Dr. Jaclyn Ocumpaugh. I am the Associate Director for the Penn Center for Learning Analytics at the University of Pennsylvania. The next several videos are going to cover an introduction to data visualization for learning analytics. And this very first video is just going to give you an overview of what we need to cover in order to effectively design uh, good data visualizations that will help improve student learning. So dashboards are an emerging area within the field of learning analytics, and that's where a lot of the research on video visualization is happening. Earlier work in this space was sometimes naive. A lot of people thought, well, if we just show people how they're doing, then they'll want to improve and things will automatically get better. But nobody really stopped to think in the early phases, or very few people stopped to think in the early phases about how these data visualizations would affect the motivation and what kind of agency even people had, so basically what control they had over their situation, whether they were a student or a teacher, right? Simply giving people information doesn't mean that they have control to change what they were already doing or that they know how to change what they were already doing. So within the field of learning analytics, there are a lot of different dashboard types. There's some that are designed for administrators. There's others that are designed for teachers or students. Parent dashboards is an emerging area. We've done a little bit on dashboards for guidance counselors in our lab, but there are other stakeholders that are, sometimes potentially involved as well. And we can also sort these dashboards by features or by how the data is organized or content. So, some dashboards are interactive. That's what we're going to focus on in today's examples. Some are for learning analytics, which would be, things that are sort of directly applicable to the student or the teacher versus academic analytics, which would help, the school admissions officer decide how many people there's space to, admit for the next year, how many sections of a particular class are going to be needed based on, how people are performing in the course currently, and so on. We'll also talk about whether the data is purely descriptive or whether it's predictive. And another area that's emerging is the prescriptive dashboard. So again, we don't want to believe that just because we've told somebody that they're failing, that they know how to fix that. We might need to give them a little prescription, um, to help them figure out what they need to do differently. And then, of course, dashboards are going to be different if it's for the individual student versus for the course, if the individual is expected to work alone versus whether or not they're asked to behave in a very collaborative manner, right? And again, the examples that we'll look at in today's videos are all going to be, for teachers and interactive and in learning analytics and all these other features. But there's a lot of variety out there in the field. Now, what people are beginning to realize is that in order to have a really good dashboard, we do need to know about statistics and algorithmic bias and also human computer interaction. But there are a lot of other spaces within the field of academia that we might want to look to for information because people have studied motivation, they've studied learning. We want to make sure that we're aligning with this so that we're not reinventing the wheel when we come up with numbers to show to people, right? What are the numbers that are going to help people understand which behaviors are helping them and which behaviors are potentially holding them back? And then once we've determined what those issues are, then we can work on making the beautiful graphics that people like, right? So this is from the website Information is Beautiful, which is a fantastic source for going in and finding um, important information about how to design good graphics. And you'll see, that there are at least 4 things here that we want to have in a good data visualization in order to generate impact, right? And that impact is really the goal, right? Not having just a good looking design. Certainly, we are seeing more and more data out there, and people, not just in education, have thought, well, if we just aggregate all this data, then we'll know what to do. But as this cartoon mentions, right, this is how well we understand all these metrics in many cases, especially when you give somebody that many metrics all at once. It's too much, right? They need to be able to sort of digest a couple of things at a time. Um, and we need to really control how we dole that out to them so that they can have the best chance to make sense out of that. I'm going to show you guys our additional resources page just to give you an overview of what's available. If you go to the additional resources page, you will find that there is a table of contents. This is a page that was actually designed for a course specifically on learner dashboards that gets taught over a whole semester. And even within the whole semester, there's a lot of information to cover. And so we have a page for tools, for data visualization principles and practices, uh, for looking for data, for human considerations in dashboard designs, and so on. And within those, you can come through and find things that we'll talk about in upcoming videos, um, things that uh, will help you find other resources, right? So certainly we have a lot of videos here on getting started with Tableau that have been curated for you, not produced by Penn, but curated for you. And then we have a pick a chart feature that allows you to find tools for picking which visualization type is most appropriate for the kinds of data that you have in terms of numerical or categorical and so on, but also tools for picking color, including those that'll help you to check for color blindness, because this is an issue that affects among American men, 1 in 12, right? So this is something that we should be very careful of. It is a slightly smaller rate for American women, and it is different by country, right? There's a genetic component, so it is different um, by a lot of factors. But with such high rates, it is something that we should be very, very cautious about. You will also find links to other considerations that we want to take into account when we're designing. And of course, one of the things that I'm going to tell you is that we want to make sure that we're aligning with visualization principles, right? But that we are also aligning with educational theory and whether or not the person actually has control over that variable. And then we also want to align with motivation and feedback, right? So there's two major goals for designing effective analytics when we're going to point them at a student or a teacher, right? If you give them a bunch of data they don't have control over, it doesn't help. If you present it to them in a way um, that doesn't motivate them to do better, you've just made things worse, right? And, frankly, a lot of the research that we produce summarizes learning. And if that's the only data that we're giving and we're not looking at process data, then we've told them something they probably already know. We've just put it in a shiny new graphic, and that's not particularly useful either. So we really need to be working to figure out what are the actions that lead to learning and presenting that data in a motivating way. So we have several short videos that we're going to go through today. One of the things that you'll see is we're going to start with who's your audience, and then we'll cover the traditional visualization rules that you'll see in many of the textbooks that are out there about how to do dashboards and how to do data visualization generally. And then we'll start introducing a specific example that we will iterate on over the course of these videos.